So, when was the last time you demonstrated courage at work? I remember that question so vividly. I was a candidate for a senior level position at a great place. I remember the big search committee that filled the room. It was very little room left for air, even. It was standing room only. And the person that asked the question, I can see her face, mm, big gulp that I did quietly. And I came up with an answer that at the time I thought was reasonable. But looking back at that question now, many years forward, I look back at that question and I know that I was not demonstrating real courageous leadership. Although at the time I thought, surely on days, certain days in particular, getting out of bed and showing up in the office, that was courage at work. It wasn't always the easiest place to show up as a leader, yet I was highly successful in that environment. But to the question about when was the last time you demonstrated courage at work as a leader? Well, I can tell you now, and with the help of not only many years of experience and training and reading and understanding and meeting people from all over the world, I can tell you that courage and leadership is not a nice to have, it's an essential. And many of us aren't doing it. Many of us aren't doing it effectively. The reason we know is as you ask employees, is your leader an effective leader who shows courage at work? Many employees don't necessarily think we're showing up as leaders in a courageous way. But there was an article in Harvard Business Review, just came out. It's in the July, August edition from Susan Francis called Everyday Bravery. And in that article, and I'll put a link to it in this video, in that article, it really spawned my thinking about showing courage at work. And I remembered that question when I was interviewing and in that search process for that job that I was just salivating over. And I gave some answer about holding a underperforming staff member to account. Looking back on it, that wasn't the real courage. Real courage means a couple of things. One is having difficult conversations, yes, but with empathy and with understanding and with grace, but still with accountability. Looking back, even as to how I had that conversation, I thought it was courageous to simply be able to have a difficult conversation with a staff member. But the real courage is how you have the difficult conversation with the staff member and doing it with more empathy and grace and understanding, yet still to account, holding the employee and being able to show my own vulnerability. That's courage in leadership, being able to be vulnerable and authentic with real alignment between my values. Because, truth be told, in that same example that I'm giving a cryptic analogy to, I can't necessarily say I was completely aligned with all of my values. While that conversation needed to be had, I was having a conversation that was built on a practice that I didn't necessarily think was the most ideal practice for the organization. So while I was in alignment with leadership, I wasn't in alignment with my values. So courage would have been, how do I first have a bigger conversation with my supervisor to get me more in alignment with those values, to further be in alignment with the practice that the organization was taking, so that I could have that difficult conversation in a more authentic way with the employee. So, a couple of things that hopefully my experience and this article can help you do differently. One is real courage in leadership requires intentionality. You have to intend to show up as a courageous leader. You also have to practice. It's a muscle that requires a little more exercise to do it with authenticity and vulnerability in a way that actually still aligns with the organizational expectations of you as a leader. So it does require practice. I suggest starting small, maybe doing it in lower risk situations. It's harder to do when the stakes are enormous. And now you've not even practiced being courageous. And now suddenly you have to show up as a person with a superhero logo on your chest. That's a little harder to do. But if you practice everyday bravery, and it looks like this, showing truth, speaking truth to power in respectful ways that actually take to task leadership points that are curious and not understood, or maybe not well thought out, but you have to do it respectfully. And there's a time and place to do it without doing it in a way that undermines leadership and takes away from the likelihood of success in your organization. So I'm not suggesting to do this haphazardly or without respect for the enterprise. Because you have done it thoughtfully, you will do it respectfully for the enterprise and respectfully for yourself. But start with low stakes environments, maybe small teams. You can practice even in your home environment. All of this is possible. But do read that article from Susan Francis about everyday bravery. I also have an infographic that I can add that pulls out some of the highlights. And to go back to that question, so you can answer it for yourself before you're ever asked in a senior level interview. When was the last time you showed courage at work in a leadership position? When was the last time? So if you ask yourself that question and become intentional about your everyday bravery, when you're asked, you can say, I just demonstrated bravery at work, and here's the example, ... And you can showcase that in a very authentic way. But just know that courage and bravery at work does require vulnerability. It requires alignment with your values. It does require oftentimes practice beforehand, being able to have difficult conversations, but doing it with empathy and grace, seeking to understand, not just to be understood, which is one of the 7 habits. Let me give credit to Franklin Covey and Stephen Covey in particular in that regard. So all of these mannerisms are possible, and I encourage you to do your due diligence in advance to show everyday courage and bravery at work. Read the article and give me your best suggestion for how you have demonstrated courage as a leader at work. Thanks for joining this week's episode of Pivot on Purpose. Join us next time, and do follow me, please, on YouTube. Click like and share and add your comments so we can all learn, grow, and go together.